Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Alignment Lab podcast by the Cosmic Touch community for creative changemakers. I'm your host, Ishita, an entrepreneur, Reiki master, and communications professional. And in this space, we invite thought leaders, visionaries, and change makers to share tools, stories, and insights that could empower your journey personally, professionally, and spiritually. And today we have with us Annie Spong, MFA. She is an intimacy coordinator for TV, film, and commercial productions and brings with her a rich legacy as a multi-award winning costume designer and stylist. So she has decades of experience supporting talent behind the scenes, and she was often the first advocate for performer comfort and emotional safety long before intimacy coordinator became an industry standard. So her work emerged from necessity, witnessing the lack of protocols. She stepped forward with compassion, presence, and leadership. And as the field of intimacy direction has grown in legitimacy and structure, Annie has continued to meet it with in-depth training, emotional intelligence, and a collaborative spirit. And she also draws on her background in storytelling, visual design, and holistic care to co-create consent-based, respectful spaces where performers and creatives can thrive. She is honored to bring her artistry, advocacy, and love of the craft to a role that lives at the intersection of safety and story. So, welcome, Annie, to our podcast.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm grateful to be here.
Amazing. So, let's dive right in. Could you tell us a little bit more about your transformational story and what
Mm,
led you to become an alternative kind of costume designer, with intimacy and care and support as one of your key skills?
yes, of course. I think early on in my career as a costume designer stylist, I was really confronted with working in the industry and um, the self-focused experience that much of it was about or economically driven. I was continually confronted with being asked to be working in these spaces and how I had an internal conflict about it. And one of the things that a mentor kept saying to me, this took a little while for me to comprehend, but I would call and share with her and be complaining about the industry, complaining about working in advertising, complaining about whatever actor, actress I might be working with, or the power structure, the dynamics of the engagement. And she would say to me, I'm sure there's someone there that needs you. Find them. And she'd hang up the phone. Like she would really completely cut me off from the ongoing complaining and the self-centered, experience I was having around, don't they know I'm supposed to be doing something else rather than this? And it took, like I said, a while. It probably took a solid year of sort of like this repetitive experience for me to, it kind of dawned on me one day, oh, this isn't about what I'm doing. It's about who I'm being in what I'm doing. And when I landed in that authenticity around that my talent and my skills and my gifts were really like the part of me that opens the door. But
Beautiful.
the frequency was really the space I was meant to live in. And so when I could see that they worked together and they were both very useful, and important, that really changed the trajectory of my work because I really honored who I was being in space. So I
Mm.
allowed myself to be loving and kind and authentic and
Wow.
true, and not to lean into the traditional um, subscribed protocol of how one works with a celebrity or an actor, or how
Mhm.
you acquiesce to their insecurities so they feel, I just remained true. And
Mhm.
that led me to really deep relationships with some people and sometimes very short-lived relationships with others. And that was okay too. So that was really my entry point.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of courage to show up so authentically, right? And like actually showing up with your heart rather than the mind and perhaps what, other people might have been doing in that at that time and in that space. I think that's super courageous and very inspiring. And I'm curious to know, like, how was this received, this authentic, loving way of showing up in in an industry which is, more known to be a little superficial? How
Mm,
was this
hmm
received?
hmm I think because I didn't have a lot to compare it to. I mean, I knew what was expected, and I knew I didn't have that tendency. Um, it was received really, really well. When I look back at my career, surprisingly, I kept landing in these incredible opportunity spaces, which I had not created. Like when someone said, "How did you create the career you have?" I was like, I just kept showing up. It
Hmm.
wasn't something I planned. It wasn't, if it was left up to me, I wouldn't have done it because I had so much opinion about it. So, um, I guess when I found that sense of being and that heart-centered space, it resonated so deeply that when I tried to step out of that and participate in a way that was disingenuous or out of alignment, it kept correcting it. I kept correcting back into the heart.
Wow.
And whether it was missed opportunity, so in your asking, like, how was it received? It was received like I said, there were opportunities that showed up that would have never been there had I not been in my heart.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, and, it was received with people sharing, it's so amazing to be with you,
Hmm.
to be in your energy and to feel like that I'm seen. And
Yeah.
to me, on some level, that felt like, am I really doing my job? Because if they're not responding like, oh my God, this is the best look or design or whatever. It was really about being.
Hmm.
And so that it was very satisfying, and also like there was a little bit of a question mark internally as I was sort of recalibrating. But I began to trust that the being was way more important than the doing.
Wow. That's very profound, and I think not something we hear very often in any profession, really, of being as a more important state than the doing. So I really love that you mentioned that and that it was so well received in just your presence having value rather than, the tasks that you did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that a lot of, people who are working and trying to like make it in any industry really, like they forget that it's the entire being of us, our soul, our presence, our entire energy, which makes things the way that they're supposed to be rather than us putting extra
Mm-hmm.
pressure,
Mm-hmm.
burning out,
Mm-hmm.
stressing,
Mm-hmm.
trying to fit into places that don't support our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what advice would you have for someone who's kind of trying to find their footing in their career right now, to lead from the heart space?
Mm. I think that the coming back to, for me, the listening and turning towards myself, whether it's a new venture or a new career path, or, like for me today, um, I'm expanding more and more into spiritual therapy and coaching. And when I turn towards those parts of me, and get curious about the alignment and the authenticity there, there's a frequency shift that allows me to receive the inspired thought, and that sometimes that's very still. And I think that that would probably be like my one thought, is like developing a practice where you can listen and really understanding that the heart informs the mind. This is our path. My heart informs my mind. And in our Western culture and our ideology today, we value our intellect more than anything. And that intellect is in service to your heart. So if you have it reversed and you're going with your thinking, very often there's a lot of troubling pathways. But if I slow down and I listen to my heart, and even if it's just, for a number of weeks earlier this spring, my mind was compelling me to do, and my heart was saying, lie down and
Mm-hmm.
rest.
Yeah.
And that was really challenging because like I've got so much to do. And it's like, well, you can't do if you can't listen. And so much of listening is the rest and the slowing
Yeah.
down, the being in nature, the
Mm.
intentionally grounding. And they're very simple and profound practices which align my heart to being present in and participating fully as nature, in nature, as community, not as a singular entity.
Wow, that's beautiful. Could you share some of your practices if you're comfortable doing
Mm,
so?
for absolutely. I think one of the my first practices in the morning is gratitude.
Mm.
I spend a lot of time in gratitude, and I also spend a lot of time in nature. And I live in Los Angeles, so nature can be elusive. It's
Yeah.
like there's not green everywhere, but I can go sit outside and put my feet on the earth or
Yeah.
walk down to the ocean's edge and just listen, and just listen to that, begin to listen and check in and, remember the heartbeat of this beautiful Mother Earth we live on. And so gratitude, and also, I definitely spend a lot of time in stillness, so meditation,
Mm.
and I use affirmative prayer. So usually gratitude, meditation. So I usually sit still, and sometimes it's guided, sometimes it's just stillness or music. And I really just practice listening, and I don't try to like quiet my mind. I just let it kind of run through and like, all right, you're really busy. What's underneath there?
Wow.
And just to listen and just not to make it right or wrong, and
Mm.
to trust that that alignment is going to, when there's a I find that when I have a curiosity and a willingness to ask for guidance, support, signs, demonstrations, synchronicities, and I have a willingness to surrender that preconceived idea of what it should look like, things begin to, you might have quote unquote downloads, or things drop into your awareness that you didn't see before. Or there might
Yeah.
be an opening that you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of it like that. And so those are really like my listening practices. And I often do that in community, meaning that I will connect with another person who's on this path, because I
Wow.
really do believe that where two or more gathered, and that community is the foundation of who we are. Like, we are not individual, separate from others. So when I ask in community such as this, let me share my gifts and be an opening for alignment, and create some curiosity or willingness to share my gifts and allow others to share theirs,
Yeah.
that
That's
makes a
so
huge
beautiful.
difference. Mm,
Very
thank you.
beautifully put. And thank you for sharing your listening, the inner listening tools that you use, because really I feel like that's such a testament to the love that you have for yourself,
Mm,
because taking this kind of space in our days to connect with our essence, to connect with what the heart wants, it's also a very courageous thing to do in our fast-paced world.
mm-hmm,
Slowing down is a courageous act of self-love. That's what I
mm-hmm,
truly feel.
mm-hmm,
And having these tools, and like even knowing how to connect with nature, knowing how to connect with the heart space, that is so, so beautiful, and something that we really take for granted. We don't really realize what a gift it is to be able to understand what our being is saying instead of just doing, like we were talking
mm-hmm.
about earlier. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I think one of the things that is really backwards in our culture is that we have um, been indoctrinated into the belief that we live in this physical world. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
master of our destiny, is this my physicality and how it projects and what it creates. And really, that's, I'm a spiritual being in this very dense physical body. And
Yes.
that's primarily what we're doing here, is having this spiritual experience as this physical being, and toggling between those edges
Mm,
is really where that expansion happens.
that's so beautifully put, because what I've also, noticed as I continue to experience life is that we're taught to be very visual, physical beings. We're taught to like believe only what we see, be
Mhm.
practical, be logical, and only really look at things which are true to the eye. But there's so much more truth in the world than what the eye can see. Even our eyes are very limited. Our perception is already colored by our upbringing, by so many things. So really like having that bird's eye perspective of being able to toggle, like you said, between, the 3D reality and perhaps the more bigger energetic reality which exists or coexists. Like that is where the magic happens when we let go and we believe in something bigger than what we see. That's when we move countries, like all of a
That's
sudden
right.
these opportunities fall in and things just start aligning. We feel happier, we feel lighter. And yeah, nature is definitely a big one to be in that frequency, like you've said so often, if being in that uplifted higher frequency.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just understanding that when I get curious about nature and how how is it functioning? How is this?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the thread underneath this? and you look at the design and you look at the abundance, you look at the extraordinary abundance of nature and its adaptability and its shifting. And when I get curious about how that aligns with my purpose here, then I have more freedom. And you're right. Then peace happens. You know, when you're in the upper room, you're in another dimension. I'm not just in this 3D experience. I'm in a 5D experience, and I'm open to being in that space. Then yes, peace happens. Love happens, joy happens, alignment happens. Yeah.
Oof, I have goosebumps just hearing you say that. Like my heart is like almost, skipping beats right now because I think I'm
Oh.
resonating so much with what you're saying. Like those upper frequencies of love, you almost have to allow them in. Otherwise we just keep getting stuck in the same old patterns, the same, conversations, the same thought processes. And then when we open up to something bigger, something different, um, perhaps even magical or mystical, that's when I think the biggest changes are catalyzed in our lives. Perhaps not right away, but in the long run, that's when we see like huge shifts happening in our lifetimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
so Annie,
Mhm.
my last question to you is, what is your spirit animal and why?
Mm. Mm. I think my spirit animal is a dolphin. And I
Wow.
think it's a dolphin because I swim in the ocean. And I go swimming in the ocean because I feel that presence, that eternal presence, whether you call it love or God or universal presence. I feel supported. Like I can
Mm,
literally walk off. I think for me that the walking off physical land into a substance and being physically supported and then having this nature all around me. Like I can hear the dolphins before I
mm,
can see them. And their curiosity, their willingness, their openness to like welcoming this completely other entity into their environment. You know, it's just it's for me it brings such love.
wow. That's beautiful. And dolphins are such like beautiful beings. Like their energy is already pretty high. And especially like water animals are always, somehow wiser is what I feel. Like they know depths that no human can even comprehend.
Mm,
So yeah, and also dolphins are very closely related to the lost land of Atlantis. And those are very healing worlds, where
mm,
uh dolphins were very much a part of the healing energies of the beings of that land. So that's beautiful, Annie. Perhaps there's some connection with Atlantis for you.
maybe I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. Well, thank you
You,
so much for spending this time with us and for sharing your beautiful wisdom and knowledge about energy and intimacy and coaching. And if there's one last thing that you want to share with anyone, what would it be?
mm, I think that one of the biggest openings for me, especially if I'm at the edge or at the beginning of something or confronted by a challenge, is can I turn towards it rather than get
Mm,
away from it? Can I turn towards it with curiosity and just begin to ask, what does this have to teach me?
mm,
You know, because
beautiful.
if I think about challenges being for me and more my expansion, then our culture can tend to have us push them away. Like there's a problem
Mm,
if I have a challenge rather than, no, this is actually for me.
I
How
love
is it for
that.
me?
How is it for me? I think this is my mantra going forward with challenges now. I love it. Well, thank
Thank
you
you so
again.
much for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you for
you.
spending this time with us. And I will put links to connect with Annie in the podcast description. And Annie, we're so excited to host more things together.
Yes, please. I look forward to that very much.
Amazing. All right, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.